Ever since the transfer window swung open at the beginning of January, tumbleweeds have blown across Europe. Even in the Premier League, where clubs usually splash for cash with little regard for the consequences, there's been near radio silence. There are just 6 days to go until the February 1st deadline, and between the 20 clubs of the Premier League, there have been only 6 permanent transfers for actual money, for a total of 44 million. 5 of those won't be doing much for their new employees in the short term either. 2 are Brighton's new set of promising youngsters, 19-year-old Valentin Barco and 18-year-old Adrian Mazila. Brentford recruited 18-year-old Turkish midfielder Konak, and Luton signed Tom Hones but loaned him out straight back to Reading. Aston Villa did a £8 million deal for 18-year-old Costa Nedeljkovic, but he immediately returned to them on loan. Ironically, considering the criticism Daniel Levy has received for tightening the purse strings in the past, it is actually Tottenham who lead the way in the spending charts at present. But even they have hardly pushed the boat out, signing Timo Werner on loan and paying 21 million for Radu Draxler, who is the only senior first-team player signed for a fee by a Premier League club this month. Spurs are thus responsible for more than half of the money spent this window. They were linked with a move to Chelsea's Conor Gallagher too, but seem to have turned their nose up due to economic reasons, echoing the wider trend of financial restraint across the continent this January. The question on everyone's lips is, where have all the big spenders gone? This time last year, Chelsea had already splashed 89 million on Mikhailo Mudryk. Liverpool had snapped up Cody Gakpo, while even struggling clubs like Bournemouth and Leeds have been busy too. So, why is this the case? The first thing to say is that the January transfer window is usually quiet. Last year's 815 million was spent by Premier League clubs, but that was an outlier, with Chelsea's extraordinary splurge accounting for nearly a third of that figure. In the previous 9 windows, the January spend in the Premier League averaged around 206 million, which is about 10 million per club. Compare that to the summer window in 2023. The 20 Premier League clubs spent a collective 2.36 billion. The summer before that, it was 1.92 billion. But these last 2 years of major spending could also be the reason why clubs are not spending this January, as big spending is now catching up with everyone. Largely European clubs penny pinching this month has come as a direct result of this previous lavish spending. Due to the Premier League's dominance of broadcasting and commercial revenue, they are usually the ones to kick off the window. Over the past 2 summers, the record for summer spending in the English top flight has been broken twice. Even with skyrocketing revenues offsetting this somewhat, in a post-pandemic world, it's understandable that the Premier League has, to put it bluntly, simply run out of money. The rest of Europe, which can only dream of affording the wages and transfer fees demanded in England, are also struggling to scrape together enough funds to make the additions they need. Prem clubs, understandably so, are seeming to take a break from this spending, as they have kind of realised they don't have infinite money. But even in this context, this January has been particularly sleepy, and the biggest reason for that is how hard the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules are biting. Everton and Nottingham Forest have been charged with breaches, and others are thought to be sailing quite close to the wind. Man United have said they will have to be really disciplined. Newcastle seem open to selling to balance their books. Wolves already got rid of most of their squad in the summer, and Fulham and Aston Villa have to be very careful. These regulations have been in place since 2015, but there was perhaps previously an attitude that clubs could bend the rules if it meant helping their squad to qualify for Europe or avoid relegation. They would take a fine or even a transfer ban for a window or two further down the line. But it would appear the 10-point penalty given to Everton has provoked the desired effect in terms of being a deterrent. It was a line in the sand moment, the realisation that punishments could have a serious impact rather than just inconvenience. Across Europe, there are countless more clubs experiencing similar troubles in their own leagues. Barcelona, for instance, appear to have run out of levers to help their domestic troubles, while Champions League finalists Inter Milan are understood to have debts around the 700 million mark. Another knock-on effect related to the PSR punishments is a relative lack of peril for some of the clubs in the bottom half of the league. In previous years, a team in Crystal Palace's position, 15th with 21 points from 21 games, 5 points clear of the relegation zone with the third weakest attack, might have considered spending a significant sum on a forward to help them out, even if it meant they had to overpay. Something like that might amount to a 30 million bet on saving 100 million by avoiding the drop. But considering the risk of relegation is a lot less now due to Forest and Everton getting deductions potentially, and the three in the bottom right now, Sheffield, Burnley and Luton, looking really poor, Palace may not think it's worth the risk. But the rules are not the only thing to have hindered the market. On the most basic level, there just aren't that many players available, at least not at the top end. Despite Miguel Arteta's public stance that he is happy with his attacking options, it's pretty clear that Arsenal would be more than open to recruiting a striker. Chelsea are also on the lookout for a centre forward. But if we look around Europe, there's not that many options. Ivan Toney is high on their list, but he's simply not attainable. Brentford are in a particularly strong negotiating position, with the Bees slapping a reported 100 million price tag on his head. Napoli have similarly recognised the value of Victor Osimhen, protecting their asset with a release clause in excess of 100 million. Lautaro Martinez would be similarly pricey, and Inter Milan are unlikely to sell him while they're in a Serie A title race. Victor Boniface might have been a candidate, but he picked up an injury before AFCON. Sergio Girassi, who had a remarkably low release clause, appears to have decided to stay with Stuttgart until at least the summer. Over in Spain, Barcelona want a midfielder, but identifying talent within the limits of their current spending power is proving near impossible. Transfer market kingpins PSG, meanwhile, are struggling to identify an appropriate left-back to cover for the injury-prone Nuno Mendes, having only signed Brazilian youngster Lucas Peraldo at the beginning of the month. So, there's just not that many top players available for good prices right now, and even if those clubs were willing to pay that money, they don't have the money right now, and another main reason for this is Saudi. With Europe in a state of economic gridlock, clubs might be hoping that Saudi Arabia can get things moving, as they did in the summer. Steven Gerrard's Al Ettifaq had raised hopes of that happening in December when he publicly begged the club's owners to invest following a terrible start to the season. Yet, even with Jordan Henderson leaving this month, Al Ettifaq have been strangely quiet in the transfer market, echoing the trend of the Saudi Pro League as a whole. Now, there are several reasons for this. Firstly, SPL clubs are currently permitted just 8 foreign players in their squads. Following all the summer transfer activity, the overwhelming majority of those spots, particularly in the 4 state-owned teams who are the biggest spenders, are all taken up. Al Hilal even had to get creative to sign Renan Lodi, deregistering the injured Neymar for the remainder of the season so they could buy Lodi in January. It's also understood that Saudi Pro League sides are gearing up for another big summer when Premier League stars such as Casemiro and Mo Salah may be more willing to leave their European careers behind. That being said, Henderson's swift exit and reports of other players like Aymeric Laporte and Karim Benzema struggling to settle in threatens to derail the sporting before it's even started. Then there's the looming prospect of a whole host of top stars' contracts winding down by the time the less congested and easier to navigate summer transfer window rolls around. Top of the list is Kylian Mbappe, who, after years of speculation, finally looks set to move on from PSG at the end of the season when his current deal expires. The French champions still hold out hope of tying him down to another contract, but the prospect of signing one of the best players in the world means Real Madrid and maybe even other clubs such as Liverpool are having quiet Januaries in order to be in the best place possible to tempt the superstar Frenchman in June. A sizable group of other top-of-the-market talent will also move into the final year of their contracts in the summer. Most of them play for Bayern Munich, with Leroy Sané, Joshua Kimmich, Alphonso Davies and Thomas Müller all yet to commit their futures beyond 2025. Liverpool legend Mo Salah, City sensation Kevin De Bruyne and Juventus star Federico Chiesa are in the same boat, as are Son Heung-min and the aforementioned Tony and Gio Reyna. Clubs are going to be more aware now that those players who are running their contracts down should be available for a much cheaper fee in the summer than in January, which is another contributing factor. But perhaps the biggest reason for the lack of big money moves is that spending a lot of money in this window tends not to work. Take Chelsea last January. They dropped around 270 million on Mikhailo Mudryk, Enzo Fernandez, Benoit Badiashile, Noni Madueke, Malo Gusto and Andre Santos, and that's a figure that doesn't even include the 10 million loan fee for Joao Felix. Chelsea were 10th at the end of the January window, and they ended up finishing 12th. Additionally, Southampton, Leeds and Leicester spent around 140 million between them, hoping to turn their seasons around. Those three clubs were relegated, all recording a worse points per game record post-January than they did in the months before. Leicester and Leeds dropped from 14th and 15th when the window started to the Championship. It stretches beyond recent history though, and extends further than the Premier League too. In 2017, a report was done on this which essentially calculated that the average club gained virtually no benefit from spending money on players in January. Even a net spend of 30 million more than the average club has generated just 0.1 points per game. Another interesting one is that the report looked at strikers bought in January in the Big Five leagues since 2012 and found that 40% of them didn't even score a single goal in the remainder of that season. Now, there are examples of January spending working brilliantly. Virgil van Dijk and Bruno Fernandes were signed in this window and have gone on to be hugely valuable, but they were long-term targets rather than impulse mid-season buys. We actually did a video on the best January signings, every club's best January signing a little bit earlier on in the month, so check that out if you want to hear more about good signings. Now, of course, there are opportunities to spend in January, but it's not going to be make or break for a club season. From a financial perspective, it's probably healthy that clubs are being weaned off the idea of spending money that they might not have this window. All of the above does not mean that this January transfer window is guaranteed to be a damn squid dough. As always at this time of the year, all it takes is one or two moves to get the entire market clicking, and there's still time left for some noteworthy deals. It should be said that there's already been a string of blockbuster loans this January too. Jadon Sancho returning to Dortmund is an exciting one, as is the prospect of Calvin Phillips finally getting some minutes to West Ham. Gio Reyna could also end up in the Premier League with Nottingham Forest. Realistically though, anyone expecting an internet-breaking transfer before the month is up is likely to be left situation in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed, please leave a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in another video.